Welcome to the Room of Lives. I'm your host, Neil. What you are hearing right now is called the shepherd tone. When you hear it for a short interval of time, it sounds clearly like a rising tone. But as you keep listening to it for longer, you notice that although at every moment it sounds like it's rising, it never actually rises to a shrill pitch and then disappears into ultrasound like it should if it was truly rising. In fact, it can go on forever, sounding like it's rising all the time, and yet actually keep sounding the same. How does that work? Well, this mystery is something you can delve into on your own if you're interested, but the point to note is that based on just a brief listening, you think it's a rising tone, so you mentally extrapolate that it must have started low at some point and it will keep rising to some endpoint in the future. However, as you listen to it for longer, you realize that there must be something going on that's a little tricky and surprising that makes your extrapolation incorrect. Today's hot take is about something similar, but about the nature of the whole evolving universe. When I recorded the voiceovers for the previous episodes of this Hot Takes series, there were only 3 of them. But recently, on a summer evening by Barton Springs Pool, I shared this Hot Take number 4 with my friend Benam. I met Benam at my first 10-day silent meditation retreat. He has a degree in computer science and physics, has learned classical violin and taught it, and also teaches yoga and rock climbing. Benam has appeared in episodes 28.1 through 28.7 to talk about his life and music, and on episodes 9.1 through 9.3, we talked about the simulation theory and its relation to the Hindu idea of Maya, that the world is an illusion. The idea of this hot take is this. In science, we take observations that we have made across a few centuries, and we try to extrapolate to the eternal structure and laws of the universe that we believe underlie its transient phenomena, laws that we believe have and will hold forever. For example, using the currently known laws of nature, we extrapolate back and say that the universe started about 14 billion years ago, and it will continue on its physical trajectory and maybe end in heat death or the big crunch or something at some point in the future. But what if not only the phenomena, but the laws of nature themselves are gradually changing over time, so that our uniform extrapolations into the past and future are wrong? And we've been wrong like this before, when we extrapolated from our flat surroundings and believed that the whole Earth was flat, or when we extrapolated from our flat Euclidean spacetime and believed that spacetime was flat across the cosmos. So, if our confident extrapolations about the permanence of the laws of nature can be wrong, that also opens up the possibility that the collective knowledge and memory of our species is only a small window into the life of the universe that remains largely unknown and can continue to hold infinite mystery and surprise for us.
Yeah, I feel like you would be, again, like the best person to do this hot take with.
Okay. Hot takes with Neil.
Hot takes, yeah. So, I don't know if I've actually mentioned this idea before, and this might not be the first time someone has come up with it, but it kind of has to do with the laws of nature. So, in science or in physics, what we are trying to come up with is not just the transitoriness of the phenomena that are just happening right now, but the sort of the more permanent, more eternal laws of nature that underlie all of the transitory stuff. So what we're trying to do is like go deeper and deeper and establish this kind of framework of nature and say, okay, these are the laws of nature and they have always held.
Right.
So basically the thing is, if you look at I don't know how much we actually really accurately know about the history of science, but the objective at least has been to be like, we are just thrown into this world. Everything seems like random, chaotic, unpredictable. And over the decades, we're basically trying to build like a strong foundation of shit that we're like, okay, no, we know that this is true and it's not just going to change tomorrow.
Right.
Our observations have changed. And basically, maybe in the past, science was such that there were some more temporary things that we took to be laws. And then over time, we're like, oh, shit, that's not actually true.
Yeah.
Some things changed. And so we went for like deeper laws that could accommodate those changes and still like hold true.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the goal. And I guess the implicit idea is that we are looking for something that actually exists, which is a sort of eternal framework.
Right.
To the universe, that the framework itself is static. Although the phenomena are dynamic, the governing laws are static, and we're gradually unraveling. And as we get better and better at this, our confidence increases that we know shit. Like,
right.
Okay, we know our collective human knowledge. We know what this universe is about, and what we know isn't just gonna like change.
Right.
The laws are true.
When you think about it, that's a pretty big assumption about the nature of reality.
Yeah, so that's the hot take I have is, what if not just the phenomena, like we are okay with the idea of the phenomena gradually changing, but what if the laws of nature themselves slowly morph over time?
Yeah.
But it might be that they morph over scales of time much larger than, of course, an individual's lifetime, or even the collective memory of our species, which stretches back how much? Like if you compile all of the results, all of our scientific results, how far back does it even stretch back? Like it has to be at least, I mean, no older than when we started writing and stuff like that, right? So some thousands of years maybe. What if the laws of nature are like slowly morphing over time so that at any, okay, so the analogy is the following. I kind of forgot about the analogy, but it is a good point to bring in the analogy. At some point, we used to believe that the Earth is flat because it's locally flat.
Yeah.
It's locally flat. We look around, it's like, okay, that's pretty flat. And so because we don't want to randomly imagine some distortion that we don't see just around us,
right.
We extrapolate this flatness out to wherever, like, okay, the whole Earth is flat. And that's because in our limited context, we couldn't see beyond a certain range. And,
right.
And there was nothing immediately beyond that was showing us that.
Right, there's actually no good reason to not believe that.
Yeah. But then what happened was that our scope increased for a number of reasons. And then we were like, oh, shit, what we tacitly imagined just continued uniformly beyond our range of perception does not continue uniformly. It's actually curved.
When you think about it, like I feel like I've always like, I'm like, yes, the Earth is round.
Yeah.
It's still very large. It's a very large round.
Yeah, it's pretty large around,
so big.
I mean, without the kinds of technology that we have to communicate across and like span the entire world, there's not much use for the model of a spherical Earth.
Yeah.
So our idea worked fine. But the problem was, I mean, when some people did start to say, okay, the Earth is round, of course, there was conflict. Like, a lot of people didn't like the idea that, this kind of easy framework that they had gotten used to, that was at least corroborated by all the visible evidence, and they just imagine, okay, it just must continue to be true. Now there's this nasty surprise, which comes back and says, you know what, you are not right. You are not correct. And so there was conflict about that. And same goes for the structure of space-time. We thought that the structure of space-time was flat or Euclidean or whatever. In the Newtonian cosmology, time flows at the same rate everywhere. And even though the Earth is round, space-time is flat in the sense that there's no warping of space-time.
Right.
And once again, space-time is actually locally flat, so we didn't notice any difference. But if you take into account like large spans of space or, very fast speeds or whatever, things like that that had been outside the scope of our context, then nasty surprises awaited us. And once again, a lot of people didn't like Einstein's theory. Like, what the fuck, are you batshit crazy? What are you talking about? So the pattern seems to be that our knowledge and our inference is kind of tangential. Meaning, if you consider that we are like inhabiting some point on a curve, and we can only see up to a certain distance, and it's locally flat. Our mind wants to have a picture of the whole of the thing. It just extends that out and says, I don't need to bother about, like, you could say it's the, what is it called? Whose knife was it?
Occam's razor.
Occam's razor. Okay, whatever. It was the thing, Occam's razor, and then the Breadlands butter side. What's that? Murphy's Law. You should have used Occam's razor. Whatever. Anyway, so yeah. I mean, this seems to be the pattern. Is that, and you can't blame humans for this. Our mind is just basically trying to come up with the most succinct narrative or model that both explains what we directly see and can also be extrapolated to create a plausible picture of the universe. And we don't like to be thinking random arbitrary complexities unless we have to.
Right.
And so now this is like another layer on top of that is the laws of nature. And we have a number of observations that we have accumulated over our past, and we have some kind of a law of nature that we're trying to arrive at that could be consistent with all of them. And we also imagine that to be stretching out forever in the past and the future. Yeah. But what if, the laws of nature are slowly morphing, but they are such that at any given point or at any given interval, let's say it spans a couple centuries, if you were to collect data and whatever, try to make a theory, you could plausibly make a flat theory that extends everywhere and it explains all the data that you collected. But maybe this big confidence that we have that, therefore we have figured out the universe, may just be like BS, because the universe could be constantly like slowly shifting. It's, in a way, it's kind of like fucking with our head.
Right.
It's like we will let you at any given point of time develop a belief that you know what's going on. and then like
well, this is interesting. So okay, how do we know we're not in a universe with curvy laws of nature?
Yeah,
that we just think are.
I mean, the way that it happened in the past was that our scope just became bigger,
right?
Due to technology and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just a question of scale,
right?
I mean, you can think of it like, okay, so the flat Earth became the round Earth, but that was still existing in like fixed Newtonian space-time, which had no problem with the round Earth, but we had to extend our context even more in order to know that even that theory was wrong. And so even if we increase our context, we could come up with some theory of the warping laws of nature, which could still only hold temporarily.
Sure.
There could be a warping of the warping or whatever, So I think this idea can be connected to a couple of other ideas that kind of starts going into like human psychology. But I'll tell you the story of the first time this idea came into my head. I was at a music festival. It was supposed to be a Sybient music festival, psychedelic ambient music festival that I went to with Stefan and Dima, and we camped out there. And Dima said that it seems like it would be illegal to be sober there. So I remember we took to rooms, and at night it was kind of chilly, but there was a big fire in like this big pit, and people would gather around that fire. And I remember I was tripping, and I was sitting next to that fire, and I don't remember what the specifics were, but I felt like in some ways maybe the arc of my life was slightly changing to accommodate certain truths that I had thought would not be possible before, that were maybe kind of trippy or magical or whatever. And I was like, what if it just continues being this way? And just it keeps on becoming more paranormal, more magical, more inconsistent with the rational ideas that I had about what life is supposed to be, what the universe is supposed to be in the past. And it just continues to distort itself completely away from whatever it was before. I was like, that can't possibly be. because it has to stay consistent with something else. Like, for example, it has to stay consistent with what my friends believe.
Sure.
And if they're not tripping, and if they've never, so it has to stay attached to some version of reality that it was before. But I was like, no, actually the universe has a lot of capabilities of just dropping and shedding its old skin. Like, what if, I don't know, some people from my previous life just start kind of dropping out of my life and new ones appear, and all the time it's slowly morphing, and some of my older memories fade away until at some point in the future I'm living in a completely different universe with a lot of magical things and whatever, shit like that. And for whatever reason, I feel no inconsistency with the past because my idea or my identity or my memory doesn't stretch back so much. And basically what I felt was like it's possible for the universe to completely sweep the rug from out under me and completely change stuff, and either have me witness it and get completely freaked out and become completely destabilized that, oh, there is actually no framework that's static, or have me not notice it at all.
Yeah.
Like, for example, people say that in this moment you believe that, okay, how old are you?
29.
You're 29. And how old is, like, the universe is some billions of years old, humanity has been blah, blah. And so you feel like there has been some kind of a consistency and stability and we have known all of this stuff. But how do you not know that the universe came into being 1 minute ago, including you, with all of these memories in place?
Mm-hmm.
So basically what I'm trying to do is I'm kind of trying to gather some kinds of wacky ideas that can challenge the stability or consistency of the structure of the universe that we so implicitly believe in.
Mm-hmm. So do you think, like, are you imagining like G, the universal gravitational constant, is actually not a constant?
Yeah. I mean, so that's one specific example where everything else is true, that the law of gravity is true and everything is true, and only the number changes.
Right. You're saying it could be even more fundamental.
But you could be, I mean, the thing is, the laws and theories themselves did not come written to us like God didn't give us a book and said this law of gravity is this and the gravitational constant is that.
Right.
We theorized a law after we saw some observations. And it could just be that the theory itself, like, forget about the number. The number only makes sense in the context of a certain theory. What if the theory itself changes?
Right.
To the point where at some point in the future, the law of nature of that universe can no longer even be written down using the same language of mathematics that we use today. I mean, the language of mathematics that we use is also kind of inference, reverse engineering from data.
Yeah.
So technically anything could change to the point where not a single language even can describe. Because what we are after is a single language that describes all of the different phenomena.
Yeah, that's an interesting, like I think it's easy to imagine like small elements being in flux, but I think trying to picture like your existence within larger elements transforming as well, and then like the same way you were trying to describe, looking back on your past, if your friends slowly change and your shift from one direction to the other, it's like, if you are in a reality that shifts to a new mathematics that's not even like, recognizable to one we know now, but we were existing in that shift, like,
I don't know if we can exist throughout the entire shift.
Sure. I mean, it might be too slow.
Yeah, it might be too slow compared to human existence. But basically it's kind of like an imagination. And what the imagination is about is, through the doing of science, we actually hope to constrain the universe in some way. It's like, okay, I got you now.
Yeah.
I know what you're about. Which what if the universe holds like this infinite capacity? We're like, oh, you think you know?
Well, I think it is like a really strong assumption about the nature of reality.
Yeah, and it's a comforting assumption.
It is. And I mean, I guess it like, notwithstanding all the ways that we could be tricking ourselves, has yielded to the scientific method so far, right?
Yeah.
So like that. I mean, that's I think why we feel more emboldened to assume that about the world is that we continue to whittle down what we need in order to describe and predict. But it's also like, it is weird to think that like we have this notion of like how old the universe is. That's on the scale of billions of years. Completely an unfathomable time length for us.
Given the observations that we can see today.
Right. Or just like any conception we could possibly have of time.
Like, for example, what's the thing, the Shepard tone? If you play someone 2 seconds of the Shepard tone and you don't let them do very detailed analysis of it, they would say this is an increasing whatever.
Right.
And they can work backwards maybe and say it started 2 minutes ago from this, whatever. But then if you keep playing the whole thing to you're like, oh shit, this is actually, you can't really extrapolate. It's kind of like a barber pole.
Thanks for hanging with Benam and me today in the Room of Lives. A few months ago, I started making some electronic music, and I'll leave you with my first track that I made, in which I tried to express this element of gradual, imperceptible change. I feel like each of the different dimensions of my life always keeps changing, but only gradually, so that life may feel static and repetitive at any given moment. But like watching clouds move across the sky, if I just give it some time, I notice after a while that somehow everything is quite different. All right, I'll leave a link to my music in the podcast description, and you take care until next time.
The dreamer and the dream are the same thing. So when the dream ends, the dreamer ends, and nobody wakes up.